can kick it off.
Yeah.
With that, I suppose.
Righto, so I am Gractus. I've been admin on ZSU servers for quite a while. Just have a look. Apparently at the moment I am up to just about 1600 hours on squad, and most of that time has been spent in Armour. Genman probably has a similar rap sheet.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I haven't been as admin as long as Gractus. I think I started in late 2019, maybe halfway through the year, so while-ish. Same as Gractus, I do quite a fair bit of armor, and I also do a lot of selling on the ground. Yeah, I think I don't have as much as Gractus does for the 1600. I don't want to look into it now and see how much of my life I've spent there instead of going outside, but I think we'll move on from that.
Alright, so for some specific ZSU server rules regarding vehicles, ZSU doesn't actually have any vehicle claiming rule, so unlike Big D, you don't necessarily name your squad and then have like full access to that vehicle. If you have enough people to get in that vehicle and it's available at main, no one's taken it yet, you can take it. Doesn't matter what your squad name is. So in general, I would recommend that if you're going to run an armor squad, just make it an armor squad, because it's very difficult to manage infantry and a vehicle at the same time. Doubly so that the communication that you have in an armored vehicle is like constant, and if you have to mix in infantry and crewmen, it's just difficult to manage. The other thing is IFVs and above have a minimum requirement of 2 crewmen to leave main. So if you have a look at the icons for your vehicles up here, anything that has one of these big flat frying pan turrets, not the small one, the big one, that's an IFV. And it's also listed as IFV there. It's basically anything with a decent sized cannon on it.
What about the Canadian LAV? How does that classify?
Same deal. It requires 2 crewmen to leave main, and I'm pretty sure the Canadian IFV actually does have that icon and it's listed as an IFV.
It's kind of anything with explosive ammo, is that right?
More or less, excluding the AA gun, because I mean that's just bad, so who cares? One other thing is, do not abandon a vehicle in the field. If you get it stuck or something, make a pretty sizable effort to unstick it, because that's quite a valuable thing that you've taken out and lost. And if it's not going to respawn on its own, it's going to be gone for most of the match. Same goes for if you get shot out of your vehicle, just try and recover it. Don't leave it. Alright. That's pretty much it for vehicle-specific rules, so. General tips, I would say, if you are going to be playing with anyone you already know, jump in a Discord channel or something, and only have yourself and the other people in that vehicle, maybe the other crewman if you're running 2 vehicles. But try not to exceed that limit, because usually it's just too much talking to be effective. A couple other tips. If you haven't already, if you look up in the command menu, there's a little cog up the top. You probably want to enable the viewing of FOB radii and viewing FOB supply points, because both of those are quite valuable to have when you're driving around and you want to find out where you can put down a repair bay or something like that. One other setting you might want to go into is in game. You can go down to, hang on, to find it. No, it's an interface, sorry. Go in and show name tag text, show name tag kit and fire teams. That means that when you look at a crewman or like one of your friendlies, you can see here on Trojan you've got a rifleman kit. It's just useful to know for like if you have a bunch of lats around you that might help you out. You can yell at them and say, you know, help us take out this vehicle. See, now he's a lat, so easy to know. Another thing is if you're playing with, well, without Discord, go into your audio settings You probably want to turn up squad voice and local voice. It just makes things easier to hear over the noise of the engine. One last thing is in your graphics settings. You will probably, if you haven't already, want to go crank up your view distance to epic. It's just a lot more useful if you can spot a vehicle at long range, especially if they can see you and you can't see them. That's a terrible situation to be in. That about covers it in terms of settings. So I'm just going to go through every vehicle that you might come across, or at least the main kinds of vehicles you might come across in a match, and just go over the different settings that you might have in there. So I jump into this MRAP here. I jump into the gunner seat. You'll see that we have the gunner's view. First thing is on most vehicles you will have a stabilization option, which means that if the vehicle is moving around it'll keep your view more or less stabilized. If Denman wants to hop into this vehicle here, drive this around, I'll just show the difference. Stabilization on, stabilization off. The stabilization off right now, I'm going to press Z, that's the default bind, and then now it's mostly stabilized for me. The next thing we might look at is if we jump into a tank. Quick.
That's awesome.
So say we hop into the Challenger. If I jump in the gunner seat and Denman hops in the commander seat, and we both turn on stabilization, that's important, then if I press E, I will seek to where Denman is looking. So if Denman turns just a little bit so that he's not facing the same way, I'm going to press E. Have you got stabilization on, Denman? Okay. I guess it's broken on this one.
Sure, it's not spacebar.
Spacebar will force the other person to look at me. So if I turn here, press space, forces him to look at where I'm looking. Usually, if I press E, then I will seek to where he's looking, but I guess the Challenger is broken. There's a few tanks at the moment where that's broken. I'm sure if we hop into, say, the Bradley, then it should work fine.
PTSD.
Yep. What's the...
I think they're fixing that in the B19 patch. And also, I just wanted to say that if you play Commander a lot in Armour, I know I do, it's probably this feature of moving the gunner to what you're looking at. It's probably the most powerful feature, because as a commander, you're constantly surveying the area for enemy targets, enemy armour, and it is so much easier to just force the gunner to look where you're looking than to try and tell them exactly what you're looking at.
Yep, alright, well, thanks for the input. Probably try and keep, since there's a good chance I'm going to cover that stuff, it's probably better to keep those points to later on if I miss them. But yeah, so in this vehicle you can see if I press E now, I will seek to where the commander's looking. In general, I would recommend that you tell anyone who's going to be in the commander seat, do not press spacebar. If they see a target, then you as the gunner should seek to where they're looking, because you know what you're engaging, you know if you want to look at what they're looking at, they don't know what you're doing. Especially if, say, you're engaging a target and you have it ranged to a, you've got a certain hold off to get the right range, and then they snap you to the target again, then you're off the target. So either way, that feature is extremely useful if the commander sees a target and wants you to look at it. You can snap to exactly where it is rather than having to call out a bearing, a distance, and everything that you might need to know what you're going to aim at. It's a lot easier if they just call out a target. I've got a tank, you can press E and you're snapped right to where they're looking. Just bear in mind, it snaps to where they were looking at the time you pressed the button. So if they're panning, you're going to be wherever they were as they were panning. Next thing we got is reading the gunner sights. So each vehicle has fairly unique sights. If we start from probably the most basic is a Crow's. Crows has very easy to read sights. They here, look. Nope. There we go. So if I zoom in, to start with we have pretty much a, well, very simple critical, just an X. If I zoom into the third stage, we can see I've got a 1. I line it up with that center of that guy. So 1 at the top, 3 at the center, 5, 9, 15. That's going to be 100 meters, 300 meters, 500 meters, etc. You can also see down in the bottom left, we've got range, 640 there. If I look further away, past I think 1500, it won't range, but closer than that will give us the range in meters. So if I see this target here at 600 meters, and I'm going to line up more or less there, and then we hit it. In the Crows, you've got 3 levels of zoom, and that's about it. If we move on to a more complex vehicle, say the, well, okay, we're just going to go through all of these as we go. In the Scout Car, this does not have a rangefinder, it's more simple. This also doesn't have stabilization, but if we look on the top right, I think those are the ranges for the piercing tracer. And if we look on the left, if we switch to the coax, those are the ranges. Oh, just going to turn slow-mo off because this is a bit weird.
Oh.
Okay. So whatever. I guess on this one the left is for the coax, right is for the piercing. Doesn't really matter. Odds are if you've got a machine gun you can just adjust once you've fired a bit. That's pretty much all you have in the Scout Car. If we have a look at the spandrel is very simple. It is just straight point and shoot. If you see an armored target, you can click, fire. There you go, you got your rocket. Spandrel fires pretty fast, very effective against armored vehicles, light vehicles, any kind of vehicle. Pretty awful against infantry. Odds are you don't want to waste the ammo on that. Just keep it for vehicles. One point is if you're using the spandrel, if you're firing, you may want to just start out with the zoomed out shot, fire, wait for the shake and then zoom in, because it's a bit easier to stay on target like that. Beyond that, it doesn't really matter, it's pretty simple,
yes.
just point and shoot. Yep, what's up?
They do have a minimum arming distance as well, don't they?
That is correct.
Yeah, so you can rush them down, but it's a bit risky.
We'll go into the different rounds in a sec. Striker has Crows, same deal. BTR, it's basically the same as the Scout Car, but look at it. BTR has 2 different rounds. You've got the armor piercing and the fragmentation. So you'll see on the armor piercing the spacing for the different ranges is a little bit tighter. So higher velocity round, I think lighter, or whatever it is. Either way, it flies faster, doesn't drop as much. Not really much to say about that one. If we switch to the coax, just bear in mind most vehicles have a coax, and for close range infantry, it's a bit easier to hit them with the coax than it is with HE or whatever else. If we jump in the lab, another set of sights. On the zoomed out view you see we have basically no ranging, but generally it'll fire off to the top right. Top right, so if we're closer range it'll hit a bit off to the right. If we zoom in, you see you have the ranging 100 meters is about the very top.
Oh shit.
So,
Ow.
alright, might be a good time to introduce high higher caliber weapons have some kind of overpressure. So if someone is standing near the barrel, you can hurt friendlies. So always consider where you're pointing when you're going to fire the high velocity round or high caliber rounds. Situations like that, you might want to consider switching to a coax because they won't hurt your friends. These sights, I mean, they're a bit weird. The main thing to consider is they start out a lot higher up than you expect when you zoom in. Oh, actually one other point about the lav is if we turn around on this, you see as we move around to the back, it jumps the camera up. That's because it's got these stupid boxes on the back that it won't let you aim at, so if you're engaging some kind of target and you drive past it, then it's going to shunt your aim off and you won't be able to engage it. That's the thing, if you're engaging a lav, you might want to consider trying to get behind it. He won't be able to shoot you if you're behind him.
PPS?
Go for it.
With the coax, how many bullets is it in between traces?
Good question, I don't know, you probably want to figure that out on your own.
Yeah.
Generally, if you have a coax on a vehicle, it's not going to matter how much you fire. Like, you can fire as much as you want, you're not going to run out of bullets.
Gractus, I think we should mention that with the lav, as we said, the box before on the back, if you have your stabilization turned on and you've looked behind you and then you look at front again, you can't look downwards. It seems to be a bug with the game, but you have to turn off the stabilization and turn it back on to be able to look down again. So it stops you from ever looking down until you've turned it off and turn it back on again.
So I'll see if I can demo that. It's slipping way up. It's a bit finicky, sometimes it'll do it, sometimes it'll work fine. At the moment it looks like it's... Nope. Okay, so now I'm stuck in the air and I have to move my mouse down over and over and over, moving it down, and now it's unstuck. So if that happens, and you're stuck in the back and you have to move your mouse down, you can turn off stabilization briefly, free it, and then you can turn it back on. But that's just a weird quirk of the lav. In general, that shouldn't happen. And hopefully they'll fix it eventually. If we jump into the BMP, this is a not an autocannon, it's some kind of... I think it's the same round as the SPG. It's basically a cannon. You can see the ranging marks on the left side there. You see the bar over the text. If I switch, it'll switch back and forth. The side that the bar is over, that's the ranges that you're using for that round. So if I currently have the high explosive anti-tank equipped, that's going to use the ranging on the left side. So assuming that's maybe like 300 meters away, I'll line it up with that top arrow. Or third arrow down. And fire. So I guess maybe that's more like 400 meters away, but whatever. When you have the rocket equipped, that's just going to fire and fly pretty much in the center. So there's a guided rocket going to track where you're aiming at. But it's a bit finicky. The Russian rockets in general seem to not fly too straight, so...
Russian rockets seem to drop first, then go forwards.
Yeah, they're, I guess, less advanced than the American ones.
Is
Well,
this
so
a
with-
squad demonstration? Just
yeah.
May I say, why shouldn't Gractus and Fubar be leading this tank thing?
I am Gractus.
And
Yeah, I know, but where's Fubar? We need Fubar.
Alright, well, fair question, but we'll kind of probably try and keep that stuff quiet.
he doesn't
Reminder,
love you enough.
if you want to say something, please ask for permission to speak. Makes things run a bit smoother.
PTS,
Go for it.
am I allowed to answer Tommy Ruppel's question from earlier?
The traces.
Yeah.
Alright, what is it?
I was just going to say, tracer round fires every fifth on the coax, and it's useful for finding your distance because of the coaxial drop-off.
Yep, valid. Generally, I would just look at where it lands. The rocket with the BMP-1, one thing to watch out for is it kind of shoots up and then it'll drop a bit and then straighten out. So if I shoot at this thing, it'll fire a little bit up and then come down towards its target. If we jump in the BMP is essentially the same as the BTR, but it has a rocket, which works the same as the spandrel, pretty much. Sights, same deal as the BTR, sorry. Not much to see there. Bradley has probably one of the more interesting looking sights. Similar to the BMP-1, I suppose. So you see, currently we have AP selected, and you have the solid bar over the right side. That's the ranging for AP on the right side. So if we have this target, which is apparently about 362 meters away, see the ranging in the bottom, then we're going to aim for about there. There you go. That's where the cannon's going to hit. If we switch to HE, apparently that doesn't animate, but I guess it doesn't need to. Ranging on the left side for HE, I'm going to fire, whatever. It's an auto cannon, you can probably just adjust once you fired once or twice. Coax doesn't actually have, well, actually I think the coax maybe uses that dash line. Which center one?
Where it's like a Y. See the dark blue line, dark green line in the middle?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go up, it's the dotted one on the right.
Yeah, okay. So it's that dotted line on the right, so it'll kind of go in that kind of, well, that kind of shape. Whatever, it doesn't really matter, you just shoot and adjust once you fired. It's gonna work. See when we switch to the toe, down the bottom left, it says deploying, because a few different weapons do not arm instantly, because it's just going to stay deploying, the bug. It takes a moment from when you select the weapon for it to be like actually active. If we jump out, we can actually see when it's deployed, the toe lifts up from the side to a firing position. So that's something that you have to keep in mind when you want to engage an armored target and you're on AP or HE. Switching to the toe, it's going to take a little while before you can fire. You can hear when it locks into position. Off onto the next one. The Warrior is basically the same as the Bradley, I think. If this would work. Alright, so we can see down on the far left there's the MG ranging. On the far right there's the HE ranging, and the ones down the center are for AP. The Warrior fires in, I think, 5 or 6 round mags. So if you're engaging something, you'll have to reload after every 5 or 6 rounds. Weirdly enough, it's kind of like a rifle in that you can have one in the chamber. So if you reload before you're finished, you'll actually have one more shot when you start firing again. Something you can do if you have a full mag at main, you can always reload it just to have one extra shot. Might make the difference. You can see it's also got kind of a curved like gun run, so it'll start off to the top right and then kind of curve down into the center for longer range shots. The coax on the Warrior is actually pretty sweet. It's got kind of a lower fire rate, but somehow it seems to be more effective than other coaxes. We move on to the tanks. Again, it's all very similar, but just different enough. On the Challenger 2 here, you can see that the gun is down to the bottom left of the sights. So when we fire, at closer ranges, it's going to start from the bottom left. You see the 0.5 mark there?
PMS.
Yep, what's up?
So, can you just zoom right out again for a sec? Okay, so if you're going to fire a shot like that at probably, 200 metres, where would you want to aim without zooming in?
Probably the center.
Yeah, righto.
So if we zoom in further, you'll see, I guess if we line up with the top of the stairs at 200 and zoomed out, it's just on the outside of the circle on the left side. But at ranges like 2 to
250.
500, odds are you can just shoot at the center and it'll hit. It's more important when you're zoomed in that you actually adjust, because it's easier to miss almost if you're trying to be too accurate. But yeah, we can see at 0.5 that's 50 meters, then 100, then 200, 500, and then it starts to loop down the center again. Different rounds are going to have slightly different runs. So the HE is, or HESH is a bit heavier, less aerodynamic. It's going to have more drop. Smoke, I guess, same deal. When you switch weapons on most of these, it's going to change the sights that show up. I think with the Challenger specifically, in the bottom left corner of that circle, that's where 50 meters is, so if you're trying to do sort of accurate close shots, you might be able to use that, but generally I would just zoom in or guess. Once you get a feel for it, then you don't really need to worry about it too much, except for long range shots. Just the main thing to bear in mind is if you're firing very close range, you're going to have to shoot, or like the round is going to come out more where the barrel is aiming than where the sights are. So very close range shots, you're going to fire, it's going to hit down to the bottom left. And that's going to be different for each tank. So if we jump into the Leopard, actually this one's got even more different sights this time. So on the Leopard, you'll see that the ranging is in tens of meters down the bottom. So that's 35 is 350. And if we zoom in, we'll actually have these dials at the side, right? It ranges like a rifle. If you hold down X and scroll up and... Oh, okay, I rebounded apparently. I have to remember what key. Okay. So normally it's X. I've rebounded.
Kitty, is that how you do it? Fuck.
Oh, that's pretty
And then
cool.
you scroll.
I didn't know that's how you
I
did
know,
it.
I'm looking at this as well going, fuck.
Yeah. You not know how, the Leopard tends to be a manual ranging compared to
I
the
thought
other
it
ones, which is already written on the this lens.
Sorry, Gractus.
Righto.
You just blew my mind then, mate.
The finicky thing about that is say you range it to like, I don't know, 600 meters or 1200 meters for the AP. So you have MG, Heat, DM33. DM33 is the AP. So you range it for that. The ranging, or the lays, is still going to be off the center of the screen. So if you're trying to spot a target really far out there, it's going to range from where the reticle would normally sit. So it's going to range from there, even though target. Oh,
No,
no, they fixed that. Hey, they fixed it. Okay. So they fixed that. That's nice. So it will range from where you're aiming. That's good.
Yeah. The only difference with the manual ranging is that it is slower compared to the others, but from what the devs go, it's the Leopard rounds does more damage than any of the other tanks do, so that's how they've counted it.
Yeah, pretty much. The Leopard seems to be the most powerful, even though most tank rounds do about the same damage. Somehow it still seems more powerful. That is the Leopard, and I think the only ones we haven't done are the Abrams. The Abrams is nice because it's just straight up and down for the sights. So on the zoomed out view, you just have the center bit, probably good enough for close range shots. We zoom in a bit, you have a new set of sights, and finally you have the AP sight. So here it's pretty straightforward, it's just straight up and down. 100 meters at the top, 3, 5, 7, whatever else. High explosive has a bit more drop, and the MG actually does have ranging, which is nice. In general, if you're close, you can probably just aim from this view, or if you're trying to take down helicopters at close-ish ranges, probably easier to do it from the zoomed out view.
When you're zoomed in, the sizing at the top of that reticle, what is that actually set for? Is that for like the size of a tank? What?
Yeah,
That's manual ranging.
I mean, since you have a laser rangefinder, and that pretty much always works, I would use that, but I think in theory, that is the height of a T-72. Probably not so easy to range now, but...
Permission to speak.
Yep.
So on the top, it's called a stadia sight. So for the vehicles, it's range for 2.7 meters.
Yeah, which I think is about the height of
Most vehicles.
most vehicles. So, with the turret, I think. Maybe not the Bradley, but most vehicles, yeah, if you want to use the stadia sight, you place the vehicle in... We get a vehicle here maybe to range at a bit of a distance. So obviously it's still very, very close. Wouldn't really bother ranging within 100 meters, but if he was able to get out to 300 meters, should fit about in that box. I guess good time to mention a lot of the tanks, if you look behind, you won't be able to look down as far because the engine's back there. If I turn around here, I can aim a lot lower. If you're trying to engage something behind you, it might be a bit difficult. So at this point he's about, what, say 500 meters away, and if we range it, rangefinder's broken. Great. Alright, so I suppose maybe in that scenario you might want to use the stadium side. T-62 is same thing again, but it's a bit rough because you don't get a rangefinder, so you might actually want to use the steadier sight.
I've put a tank
Maybe
over
we
here.
can try it out here. So if we have a look at this, it's maybe 700 meters away. We take a shot at it. There we go. So it does work, but odds are if you're the squad leader, you probably just want to use your observe mark and range using that, because it's going to be a bit quicker than trying to line it up and then take your shot. You can see with this one, it's got a whole bunch of ranges at the top, but I don't know why, because the actual sight does change. It's basically the same as all the other ones. Starts 0.5, but it's way off to the right. So if we're aiming at 10 men, that's 0.5, that's 100, that's 300, that's 400. Same way as any other tank works, really. Yep.
I think those sites at the top are backup sites because Soviets, they like to engineer to fail.
Alright. Well, fortunately in squad, you won't have failed sites, so don't have to worry about that. T-72, same deal, kind of like T-62 but slightly better. Starts at 100, 2, 3, starts from the right, comes towards the center, and then down. You'll notice that if we line up the 100 here with the top of that sign and zoom out, that's basically where the side, or the right side of this site is. So the end of the site is about 100 meters, which is quite useful for taking out, or anything at close-ish ranges, or helicopters especially. If you don't want to be zoomed in, it's a bit harder to aim when you're zoomed in so much. If you want a zoomed out view, you can kind of use that to take them out. You'll also notice at the center, that's 500 meters. Or maybe 6. Yeah, it's probably 6. So, good to know if you're trying to take out a helicopter, you can track it more easily on the zoomed out view. On the T-72, we also have the guided round. So if you zoom in, you'll see the ranging marks disappear because it's a guided munition. It just goes where you're pointing. Same as the spandrel. And apparently it's actually quite maneuverable, though. And it's gone. So specific tips for each of these vehicles. You'll notice that if we're in a tank or anything with a larger caliber round, if I switch to AP from the rocket, you'll hear the loading sound, and now that green light comes on in the bottom left, saying that the round is loaded. If I switch weapons, I have to reload the whole thing again, right? So if you are engaging two different kinds of vehicle, or if you're engaging infantry and then you see a vehicle, and then the switch from your coax back to your main gun, it's going to take a while because it has to reload. For that reason, you probably want to pick out what kind of ammunition you're going to use before the engagement if you know what you're up against. So, if we're fighting vehicles, you want to keep out your AP.
PTS?
Yep, go for it.
I believe the Russians, in comparison to the Americans, are a lot slower just because of the fact that they have an auto loader. You find that the Americans are a lot quicker off the reload.
That is true, but it's not a significant enough difference to make a difference in an actual tank fight. Like if you come against an Abrams and a T-72 and you both fire off at the same time, it's probably going to be down to whoever shot first than the reload time. But the T-72 does have a slightly longer reload than any of the tanks without an autoloader.
Plus T-72 has toes.
That's true. The T-72 guided rocket is a bit finicky.
There is an arming distance on that, so if you do run it into a Abrams head-on around a corner, the T-72 always loses because it can't shoot fast enough.
Basically, any of the missiles, as with AT, they're going to have an arming distance, and I'm pretty sure on any of the vehicle-fired stuff, it's 40 meters. So that goes for the rockets fired out of the T-72, the tows fired out of the Bradley, the Hornets fired out of the BMP, both the guided rocket and the standard rounds for the BMP-1, and I think that's about it. So anything that fires a rocket, it's going to have an arming distance, and you want to make sure you're outside of it. That's especially fun in the BMP-1, where if a vehicle rushes you, you're stuffed. Because you won't be able to hit them. Or you can, but it'll just bounce off, won't arm. So that's why, in terms of the weapon switching time, that's why it's important for the BMP-1, the Bradley, and any of the tanks. Anything that takes time to load, make sure you have the round that you're going to fire loaded. Then if you find whatever you're going to engage, you can actually hit it straight away. When we're talking about the BMP-1, one tip is the weapon switch time from a normal round to the rocket is basically instant. Not loaded right now, but if it was, and then we'd be able to fire it off as soon as we switch to it. However, with the heat, it does have the loading time. So, if we're on heat, we have to load it before we can actually fire. That means that if you're using a BMP-1 against vehicles, you almost always want to have heat loaded, fire that off, switch to the rocket, then fire the rocket, because it's going to be faster than if you did it the other way around. Doing it that way, you can almost always kill off like a warrior or something in like 2 seconds rather than 30. Alright, so that's basically all the sights and whatever else you might have. if we jump into one of these vehicles for a moment and go for a little drive around, if you don't know already, all of these vehicles, they've got a handbrake, and if you use that to turn at higher speeds, it's going to be a lot more effective at turning. We just build up a little bit of speed. If I say try and turn to the right now, I'm going to kind of drift around to the right, kind of drift around to the left. However, if I get back up to the same speed and then do it with the handbrake, just holding down the handbrake, it's going to turn almost on a dime, right? So if you haven't already, you want to familiarize yourself with how the handbrake affects turning and use that pretty much on any corner, as long as you're not doing slight adjustments. Yep.
What's the button for the handbrake? Sorry.
The handbrake is space by default. The only thing with the handbrake to watch out for is if you're holding the handbrake and then you dismount. I was just holding the handbrake and I dismounted. If I hop back in, there's a pretty good chance if I try and move now, it's not going to move. I'm going to be like, oh no, my vehicle's broken. I'm stuck on something. It's because there's a glitch where if you're holding the handbrake and you change seats or hop out, it'll leave the handbrake on. So if you just tap it again, as I did just then, now I'm free and I can move again. So something to watch out for if you think you're stuck on something but it doesn't make sense. It's probably because your handbrake's stuck on. Another thing is, when you dismount a vehicle, it's probably a good idea to turn off the engine because it's just going to give you away. Or it's just nice to have some silence so you can hear other things coming. So that's basically it in terms of the controls. I think we'll move on to what crew roles are now. So, as the driver, your roles are probably going to be related, well, as a driver you've got a lower cognitive load, right? Because you don't have to be looking around as much. You're basically just driving. You could probably be tabbed out. Well, you could almost be tabbed out and still be getting to where you need to go. So, your role, typically the way I would run it, is have the driver as the squad leader, because that way they can be on the map and they can be talking to other squad leaders, while a gunner has a chance to look around and just always stay alert. So, the way we run it is, odds are, squad leader will be the driver, they can talk to the other squads. The other thing he's supposed to do is, if, say, I'm in the gunner, and I say, oh, can we move, let's move over here, over that kind of distance, the driver should be in charge of how to get there. And they should be able to read the map and figure out what a good path is, unless they're given other instructions by the gunner. But because the gunner is always sitting there, scanning around, they shouldn't have to tell you, oh, use this path here, and then here, here, here. Hopefully your driver should be good enough to know how to get from A to B over longer distances without specific instructions.
What's your opinion on squad leaders running as commander in a 3-crew situation?
I mean, I wouldn't say that you have to have the driver as a squad leader, but if you are, well, I'd probably say that's the ideal setup. Commander, if you've got one, could well be on the radio as well, but personally I think it takes so much out of it to always be alert, looking at whatever else, well, looking for targets, that kind of role is probably better served to the driver. But, of course, some people are better at talking and staying alert. Some people have more difficulty just driving. Yeah, that's probably up to you how you run it, but that would be my suggestion, is that the driver should be on the radio.
PTS?
Go for it.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed, as if you're the gunner and you're the squad leader as well, and you're constantly checking your map or talking to other squad leaders, it's an absolute nightmare, and you can't focus on what you need to be focused on. So that'll just saying that'll change the way I run a vehicle, I'll probably stay as driver from now on to share that cognitive load.
If we move on to the gunner, their role is really look around for targets, and well, if something sneaks up on you, that's probably the gunner's fault, because they really should have been looking around and seen that kind of thing. Obviously, you're going to have communication between all crew members. Anyone should be on the lookout, but really the gunner should be focused mostly on just scanning around. Always scanning, always watching. So that's their main role. Anything else should probably be prioritized by other crewmen. Second role is obviously engaging targets. You've got the big gun, so if you know how to aim and you know where they are, you should be able to kill them. However, during an engagement, a gunner should be able to direct his driver very specifically so that they're in the right position to fire. Say, if currently Denman is our driver, if I needed to engage a target behind this BMP2, say that was a rock, not a BMP2, I could say, alright, move us forward, forward, forward. Okay, now I can see the top, stop, stop, stop. Back up a bit. Just a little stop, and hold. And then now I can see the target, the imaginary target behind the BMP2. I should be able to direct them, and if I can't talk and tell them how I need to be positioned to engage the target, then I probably shouldn't be in the gunner seat, because the driver does not know what you're aiming at. So you need to constantly tell them where they need to be, what they need to be doing, so that you can engage the target. That comes into it as well when you're trying to move into, say, like a hold down position or something. If I say, alright then man, let's move up behind this BTR wreck off to the left. Alright, hold there. Now I know, okay, I've got a pretty good view over the the BTR, sorry. And I can tell him if I needed to adjust or reverse a bit, or move back a bit. Hold. Alright, there we go. Now we're in a decent position. If I hadn't told him that, say, I don't know, this was my view, and then I'm sitting there, and he sees the BTR come around, and he's like, hey, shoot that BTR. I'm like, sitting there, looking at the sign, thinking to myself, I can't see it. I need to be telling him, I can't see that BTR. We need to move positions so that I actually have a view or something. If you're not... Yep.
Just don't fucking tank if you don't have a mic.
Yeah, I mean, that probably goes without saying. As the gunner, you need to communicate and tell the driver where to position during an engagement. So, basically, if the gunner needs to, like, dictate where the tank is, the driver should just listen to him and move where he's being told to go. Gunner needs to be able to tell them where to go. Another thing, alright, well, the commander seat is technically optional, since there's no, well, you need 2 crewmen to leave main, but it's always nice to have a third. They basically act as another set of eyes, and that can be extremely helpful, or not that helpful depending on how communicative they are. But their main roles are scanning for targets, just like the gunner, and if the gunner is engaged in a firefight with, like, say, there's a vehicle around, but there's also infantry, commander has a pretty good gun for taking out infantry, and it's extremely important that they take out infantry, say there's a LAT coming up, because of the aforementioned time to switch between weapons. Because if I'm sitting here waiting for a tank to come around that corner, and I have to keep switching to my coax to shoot a LAT that's trying to kill me, so there's a guy on that tow, I have to keep switching between weapons, and it's going to take a long time before my AP is loaded again to kill that guy. Yeah, often you'll be in situations where you keep on switching, switch to that, take out a guy, and then you're waiting, and then another guy comes up, you have to switch back, shoot at him again, and you never actually have your AP loaded. That's why it's very important for the commander, if possible, kill the infantry for you so that you can actually have your gun ready for whatever vehicle you need to take out. Often enough, if you're only running with 2 crewmen, if you get into a position that you like, the driver can jump into the commander seat and just will work area security or helping out to kill whatever infantry is coming around. Not only that, but the commander seat is actually not too bad. It's got a 50 cal. It's good for light vehicles and helicopters, that kind of thing. They can sometimes help kill a BTR or something, though it's probably not worth wasting the ammo because the main gun can kill that. The biggest problem with the commander seat is you'll run out of ammo. That's the real issue. But a fully crewed tank with a commander, gunner, and driver is probably going to work the best out of any of those. Say you are in a situation where the vehicle gets damaged, the last person to get out should be either the gunner or the commander. Someone in a gun, right? Because if you say you're tracked and you need to repair, and the gunner hops out, and the driver's just sitting there, not driving because you're tracked, it's not really the best way to do things. So if you get tracked and you're immobilized and you need to repair, the driver should be the one that hops out and fixes the vehicle. Say if you're in a 3-man crew, you could maybe have 2 people hop out, but always have 1 person in the vehicle that can gun or do whatever. The tank is of no use if you're 2 dead crewmen next to it, when you could have had 1 crewman in there shooting all the guys, even if he's immobilized. So always have 1 person in the vehicle.
If I might Gractus on 2 little things there as well. Keep in mind that when you leave a tank, you spawn on the top of it. So if you're trying to get out and you're being shot at by a lot, you will always spawn on top, and you are extremely exposed up here. Likewise, same things to keep in mind as a gunner. The driver can't react as quickly as you'd like when you say stop, that you will stop straight away. It's a tank. It takes a bit to move. So keep in mind that when you yell stop, you may have to go back or forward a tiny bit. So small increments will always occur with that.
Yep.
PTS?
Go for it.
Isn't there also slight delay in VoIP with squad? I've noticed that there's almost
in squad, yes, absolutely, there is a delay. That's why I would recommend, if you're playing with people you can get in Discord with, get in Discord because it's a bit quicker. Squad seems to have maybe a half-second delay or something in voice chat, which can be, quite annoying. As Demon said, there's a bit of a delay in the reaction time of the vehicle, so if you're the gunner and you know that you're going to want to stop in a second, you might want to say like forward slow, so that if you call for a stop, it can actually stop in time. Also, if you're a gunner and you get pissed off at your driver because they're not reacting fast enough, you're probably not communicating what you want to do well enough to facilitate that. So don't get pissed off at your driver because he didn't seem to react fast enough. It is a 60-ton tank or whatever. It's going to take a while to stop. Alright, well, I think that more or less covers it for crew roles.
Yeah, PTS.
Go for it.
Another major role as a driver is facing the hole in the right direction.
Yep, we'll get to that. So now we are going to cover the damage model of squad. So a general rule is AP for anything that is armored, HE for light vehicles, and that's pretty much it. So on tanks, you're always going to have an AP round. Oops, that's the wrong seat. You're going to have an AP round. If you're looking on the left here, we have armor piercing sabot. That's going to be your thing for anything that you can't shoot through with a normal rifle. And basically any vehicle. In a tank you have enough rounds, you should be able to one-shot any light vehicle, you might as well use AP. If you use HE for a light vehicle, odds are it's not going to die in the first shot. It will burn out, but it won't die instantly, so better to use AP. HE exists for sometimes anti-infantry, but usually the coax is better for that. Main thing it's for is taking out buildings or emplacements that the enemy has built up. So if you see a HAB, you're going to use high explosive rounds to take out that HAB. Usually it's going to take about 4 shots to kill a HAB, or at least disable it. Your coax, probably the best for infantry. It's usually a waste of time to be firing HE at infantry, unless they're around a corner or something, or they're really grouped up. Odds are it's going to be faster to just spray them all down, because the coax is pretty ridiculous powerful. The only reason, I mean, if you consider if a machine gunner who couldn't die came around the corner at you, he'd probably be pretty damn scary, so like the coax is nothing to be laughed at. Like it's probably the most effective anti-infantry weapon. Outside of tanks, or in some tanks, you will have one extra round. That's going to be the frag round. T62 carries a lot of that. Frag round. Don't know what I'm showing you, but basically it's only for infantry. It will do nothing to anything else. Vehicles won't take any damage. It's purely for infantry. But it is good because it's got quite a large splash radius, so if we hit near infantry, odds are with frag they are actually going to die. So, depending on the situation, you might want to use coax, you might want to use frag. But frag is actually worth using against infantry, unlike heat. All of the tanks are going to have basically the same set. They're going to have 1 AP, 1 HE, and 1 frag, if they're Russian. If they're, like the Challenger 2 has a Hesh round, which, for all intents and purposes, it's just HE. Same goes, well, okay, no. So if, on the IFVs, the 30 mils and 20 mils, 25 mils, AP should be used against anything that you can't shoot bullets through. So scout cars and up, you want to use AP. Anything less than that, probably want to use HE, just because usually AP is quite precious ammo. Say the Bradley only carries 70 AP rounds, but 230 HE. If you see a Logi come around the corner, HE is going to kill it, AP is going to kill it, but you have 230 HE rounds and only 70 AP. So 70 AP, 230 HE. So for pretty much anything with a cannon, if you see a light vehicle, so something you could shoot people out of, use HE. Anything heavier than that, you should be using AP, because HE will do literally nothing to an armored vehicle. Like if you come around a corner with a BMP2 with the full auto HE against the Bradley, you will do nothing. It's gonna maybe tickle. And same goes for basically anything with a cannon. It's going to have an AP round and an HE round. HE rounds are for infantry, light vehicles, and like maybe light emplacements. So if you want to take out a tow or something, you might use HE. Anything heavier, like an actual fortification, say Hescos or something, it's not worth the ammo. You will destroy it eventually with HE, but it's not going to be worth the ammo. Go for
What
it.
do you find is the most effective for destroying radios and
HABs, don't bother if you only have a cannon, like an autocannon. If you've got a proper tank cannon, then HE. AP will do nothing against something that's like Hesco's, made of sand. If for radios, doesn't really matter. Whichever you have more of, I guess, is what you'd be using. Like, or if you can't get a direct hit on a radio, maybe you want to switch to HE because they're easier to hit. Or you got some splash damage. Or say someone puts a radio inside a shipping container, and you know where it is, but you can't get an angle on it. You might just use AP to shoot through it and take out the radio. So it doesn't really matter for taking out a radio, just situational, I guess. BMP-1, that's got the heat rounds, which are, I guess that's the only example where you're using HE something against vehicles. So it's got heat and frag. Heat against vehicles, frag against infantry. The lab is basically exactly the same as the Bradley. The BTRs, the 30mm, or the Russian 30mm, are pretty much the same, but they're slightly worse than the American stuff. Crows, so 50 cals, you can engage anything less than a tank. But against Bradley, it's not really going to do much. I mean, it's going to hurt it, but it's not going to hurt it much. Same goes for the Russian 14.5. That's basically the same as a 50 cal. Maybe slightly better, but it overheats and you have to reload it. But same deal. Anything less than a tank you can engage. Probably not a Bradley. So like, okay, maybe tracked vehicles don't go after with a 50 cal. Wheeled vehicles, go for it. But with some caveats, you have to aim in certain spots. And I guess with a Cornet, only go for vehicles, don't go for infantry. In terms of where you have to aim for all of these vehicles, we'll go through it first if you're using just a autocannon or a 50 cal. So like the Russian 30mm or the 50 cal. Logi, anywhere. MRAP, if you encounter it, you can actually shoot through the windows if you have a 50 cal or above. Or like an autocannon, right? So if you're in a scout car, you come up against an MRAP, shoot through the windows, and get the gunner, and you can actually decrew it without killing the vehicle. And then you can decide if you want to blow it up. First thing though, shoot through the windows, shoot through the gunner seat. Yep.
Would you what points would you recommend destroying the vehicle in a game? Is there any time that would be better to disable it rather than destroying it?
Turret rings and engine base.
So when you would want to destroy a vehicle?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I worded that very terribly.
Depends on. I mean, generally you're probably okay to just blow up anything.
It's also dependent on person to person. Like me personally, I'm of the option, whether it's a Logi or anything, 5 tickets is 5 tickets. Blow it up. You get those tickets easy.
Yep. Well, I might say if it's a Logi and it's behind enemy lines, I'll try and leave it alive to screw them.
Yeah, I mean, I usually leave Logis alive, but MRAPs, I find that it's just easier just to send them into the fucking abyss.
Yeah, with an MRAP, the only situation where I might not blow it up is if I don't have the ammo or I don't have the time.
If it's the 50 cal, the open top, then you don't have to destroy it. But if it's the crows, it does a lot more damage.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess that's just down to the situation in the game. Most of the time, just blow it up. Main thing is, when you engage it, shoot through the windows, kill the guys in it first. Don't try and kill the vehicle. It's easier to just kill the guys out of it, then it can't shoot you. Especially with the crows. In the crows, the driver, or the gunner, sits right behind the driver. So in this seat here, that's where the gunner sits. You can shoot him through the front, just right through there. Obviously, most vehicles are a bit taller.
Disabling the engine on the MRAP.
You don't have to get it. You don't have to be in a gun. You don't have to be inside Gractus.
If you just got the AK or a FAL.
Oh, the engine on a MRAP, sure.
Yeah, do we want to give away the secret spot? Damn it, Trojan!
Well, this is armor training.
It's like,
Well, I mean, I'm not 100% sure I know where you're referring to, but...
Okay,
So on the front...
Hang on, look at the front wheel. Look at the actual wheel side on. See the gap. So the gap between the well and the front of the tire. So see the top of the ring. You can literally just shoot through that space there. Up a little bit. There, shoot. Just shoot through there, and just keep shooting. Done.
Engine's gone.
Well, that's helpful to know.
What? Did you
Well,
know
I guess that's...
It's hella weak. Yeah, it's really fine.
There's no armor there.
Guess what my fucking rocket.
I guess that's useful if you're infantry.
You don't. Well, you don't need to use. That's the thing. You don't need to use a rocket because you can just do it with any firearm. You get close enough, you take out the engine, and then you can leave it alive. If that's what your intention was, because they can't get in it and drive away.
Alternatively, if you have a higher caliber weapon and you're in a vehicle, not infantry, you can just shoot through the front.
Yeah, bullet wasting, right? Bullet economy.
Yeah.
Either way, yeah.
But if you're already in the vehicle, load up with the vehicle.
In a TAP V, it's basically the same deal, but I believe the gunner seat, depending on if you want to hop in.
The gunner seat is
I think it's
midway up the back on the left side.
Okay.
So you can see the monitor. You can see the monitor on the left.
There he is.
Oh yeah,
right
in the middle.
So he's right in the middle. But just spray into the crew compartment, try and kill the gunner. That's way easier than taking one of these down. TAP Vs are pretty tough, and they've 50 kills, no joke. In terms of spandrel, there isn't really a weak point, nor is there a strong point. You can shoot it anywhere with any vehicle, and it'll take damage. One thing is it's a bit weird. Try not to shoot the glass, because I've found that sometimes that just eats rounds, even though it should be a weak point. It's just glitchy, so try and hit the actual skin of the vehicle. On the striker, if you have a 30mm or a 14.5, so anything that's not a tank, try and hit it in the bottom plate here. Because if you hit it in the top plate, or I think in the front plate as well, it won't really do any damage. However, side on, you can just shoot it anywhere. There's one other point on the front where you can kind of do damage, is on the flat bits up here. But generally I would just try and aim down on that, on the lower plate, it's just easier.
Is it also sometimes an option to try and take out the turret on a striker?
Yep. So I'll try and get into the modules in a sec.
Okay.
In the 30mm, you can basically be pinned anywhere, it doesn't matter. Probably, yeah, to prioritize the turret because it's easier. Well, yeah, get to that. In the lav, I'm pretty sure, though you probably want to test this yourself, pretty sure the lower plate is pinnable by a 30mm, otherwise in the sides or in the center, the barrel of the turret. I don't know. I actually haven't fought enough labs to know. BMP, impervious to 50 cal on the front top plate for sure. Lower plate probably not. I would just shoot for the turret because it's accessible anywhere, or inside if you can get to the side. But from the front top for sure, that's impervious to 50 cal. And I think a Bradley will get through it, like a 30mm, 25mm will. Same deal for the BMP2 because it's basically the same thing. Warrior, don't even try with a 50 cal really, and with a 30mm, basically impervious on the front, except for anywhere in the turret, it'll take damage. So if you come up against a warrior, it's really scary until you realize their whole turret is a weak point, and you can just lay into that with a 30mm. Otherwise, in the sides, maybe, but I would just shoot the turret, because, I mean, then you're doing 2 birds with 1 stone. You will kill it if you just focus the turret. For tank v tank, okay, 30 mil, useless against a tank unless you're shooting it directly in the rear in the engine. But I would just run away. Don't bother trying to fight a tank. Unless you want to like distract it or something for a friendly tank. If you're an actual tank, you want to shoot it in the gun mantlet, so like where the barrel connects to the turret. That's where you want to hit it from the front if you can. Otherwise, in the Challenger 2, I think it is about there.
The bottom plate as well, Gractus. That whole flat plate is very weak as well.
So basically for a Challenger, the whole bottom plate and in the driver's hat should probably work too. Main thing to avoid is these plates and probably not the top parts here. Nor do you want to fire at too steep of an angle at the side. So say you have this shot here. Probably don't shoot here because you might track it, but you probably won't do damage. Probably just want to shoot for the gun or that plate. But most tanks, except for the Abrams, you can pin that lower plate or just the whole front. But never on any tank can you pin the turret cheeks.
We'll probably just get ricocheted and do no damage.
Yeah. That's probably a good thing to demo, actually. If jump in here. Oops. If Denman wants to fire on the turret cheeks there, of that tank.
Oh, it's harder to aim then.
Oh yeah, that one, okay. Hang on, I'll just slow it down.
Yeah, please do. Can't aim at this.
Can you talk in a really high-pitched voice when you're doing that, please?
Alright, so, yep, fire. Okay, so that was an actual hit.
It would be funny if he just keeps on hitting him and he kills him with it.
Okay, if we go for the turret cheek, make sure we get a ricochet.
Yep, I'll try my best. Not used to missing on purpose.
Deadman's too good.
That's it.
Don't inflate his fuckboy ego anymore.
Alright, so you see the sparks there, and you actually see the round bounce off into the air. That's a bounce, means you did literally no damage to it. If you don't bounce, it should take about 4 rounds to kill any tank. Assuming you don't bounce. If you get good hits on the ammo rack or in the turret ring for some tanks, you should be able to do it in 2. It won't necessarily be an insta-kill. Specifics, well, I'll post up a video of where you need to aim on all of the tanks exactly, because I don't know off the top of my head for sure. But in general, before I post that video, on the Challenger you want to shoot about there, from the front. On the Abrams, you want to shoot in the turret ring on the sides, so like there or there. Should be able to two-shot it. On the Abrams, other than the turret ring and that.
Here's the thing though, Skid.
Should I what?
Alright, so on the Abrams, lower plate, front, basically the whole thing is impenetrable, except for in the gun. So about there, you want to aim in the gun. Or if you're lucky, those turret ring bits on the sides. Odds are, if you don't have time to aim for a super good shot, 1 round in there is better than a missed round on the side. Because every time you hit the turret, it's going to damage his turret, it's going to make it harder for him to aim. And it's an easy shot to make, to get in the gun. Any tank, anywhere on the side, it's going to be all good. Any tank anywhere in the back, it's going to be all good. If you're hitting the turret, you probably want to hit the side back section of it, because sometimes the front side can be a bit finicky with bouncing. Especially if you, I mean, obviously don't shoot the cheek. That part, impenetrable. T62, doesn't really matter where you hit it, because it doesn't really bounce because of crab armor. So probably don't try and aim for the sides of the turret like there. Those are probably going to bounce. But if you're shooting in the front, you probably want to aim about there, I think. That should ammo rack it. And for the T72, it should pin pretty much anywhere on the front, but you want to aim like there to ammo rack it. Maybe there.
BTS?
Yep, go for it.
With the T62, is there a chance that you could take it out with a 30mm?
Not really.
No, but you can destroy all modules with a 30mm on the T62, so you can track it, take out its engine, take out the turret ring, you just can't kill it.
Yeah. If you've got a 30mm and you're trying to fight any tank, probably the best you can hope for is track it and then run away.
You're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, once it shoots at you, you're dead. So.
Or one shot, you're dead, basically.
Yeah.
LAV can take 2 hits on a T62.
Oh yeah, the LAV takes 2 hits.
Yeah,
it's to the front.
Almost any IFV will take 2 hits from a tank, except for the BMP2 or the BMP1. But, you know, do you really want to risk it? Because they can get your engine, and then it's a guaranteed kill for them.
I was more curious.
But yeah, IFV, just don't try.
What's an ammo rack?
Ammo rack, yeah, okay, we'll jump into, that's the last tank, so we'll jump into the modules. Make sure I covered it. T72, basically anywhere in the hull penetrable. Anywhere on the turret that's not in the gun, not penetrable. So don't shoot the turret, shoot in the gun or in the hull. Sometimes the hull will bounce depending on where you get it, but most of the time you're okay. If you see that bounce effect, obviously don't aim there. In the back, easy enough shooting it. Okay, so in terms of the modules you have in a vehicle, those are available to the driver. So as the driver, if I look from the left side of the speedo, I've got the little ammo with fire icon. That is the status of your ammo rack, which basically, if that gets down to below a third, your tank's going to start shooting out a lot of flames, and that's going to start ticking down until it gets to 0, and then you will blow up. Nothing you can do once that actually starts to go off. And you'll hear it'll have like a crackling, fiery sound, and you'll probably know that's really bad. If you get ammo racked, maybe try and get another shot off, but probably time to run away or dismount and get out. It'll be pretty obvious the icon will turn red, and yeah. Main problem with the ammo rack is the only way to repair it is to go back to a repair station, and it'll take a really, really long time to repair for some reason. I don't know if that's a bug or if it's intentional, but it can put you out of action for like actually 10 minutes to repair an ammo rack, whereas repairing a tank from like dead will take maybe 2 minutes or like 5 minutes, you know. For some reason that's really slow to repair. That's why usually if the ammo rack is damaged, I will only bother getting it up to like 3/4, because it's going to die in 2 shots. And if you bring it up to like 3/4, then you'll take 2 shots for it to go all the way down anyway. So if that makes sense.
It's worth it to go the ammo rack of a tank instead of the engine?
Engine is really to immobilize it more than anything, but we'll get to that. So if you can ammo rack, then yeah, it's worth it because you can 2-shot the tank rather than 4-shot it. Because it's always going to take 4 shots if you don't, 2 shots if you do, including the Abrams where you can turret ring it, where it won't necessarily be ammo racked, but it will take double damage, so it'll take like 2 hits worth of damage. So yeah, Armour rack, good place to hit. Then the next icon along is the turret icon, right? So that's the health of the turret. As that gets progressively more and more damaged, it's going to lose stabilization, turn slower, eventually like the sights will be cracked, and then you will actually, basically it'll be locked and you won't be able to move it. If I jump into this Bradley over here, oops, and get Deadman to fire at the turret, we'll see how damaged it will get.
With the BMP or the tank?
Probably the tank.
Alright. I just don't want to kill you again.
Yeah, alright.
Ready?
Go for it. Alright, so we see the screen is now cracked. And this thing is way slow to turn. That's as fast as I can go. And
You're on fire.
no stabilization. Oh, it shouldn't be burning out. I'm not a crewman.
No, it's not. Otherwise.
So if we have a look, turret's totally stuffed. And the most you can repair a turret is not very much, really.
Get it up to 50%.
No, not even
No, you
50%.
can't even get it to that.
It's like a quarter tops.
Yeah, I don't think there's any point in even trying to fix the turret.
Main reason you might fix a turret is just to get it moving more than just like stopped. So it's actually fairly mobile now.
But I
Do
don't
not
think
have
it's...
stabilization.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting the turret really hit significantly affects your affects your effectiveness, because you're not going to be able to engage on the move really, and slower. Also, you're half dead. That goes same for pretty much every turret. It's going to have the same thing. If it doesn't have stabilization, obviously it won't lose it. It's already gone. But that's what happens when you get hit in the turret. We jump into the vehicle again. We can see the next one on the far right is the engine. Turn on the engine, see it animates. There's the engine on, there's the engine off. If you take a hit to the engine, then you're going to have a bunch of fun smoke effects, and you're not going to be able to move the vehicle very fast. So if I jump into this Bradley again...
It might be easier to do the MRAP, seeing as they've taken the engines out already.
No, I don't know, I'm here already.
Yeah.
Feel free to take out the engine on that. See, it has nice, fun explosion effects. Is that actually fully taken out?
I think so. I think the effect...
in the front?
Yes, it's gone.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think the BMP is in the front, isn't it? It's like
Yeah. I guess the BMP doesn't smoke up too much. If we get a warrior here, that's a good example. I'll just show if Deadman positions a warrior so we can take that out. If I turn on the engine, at most you're going to be able to like turn a little bit. So it'll nudge. Turning will be okay, but can't really go forward. And same deal for reverse. If you turn, usually you can like nudge it a bit, but it's not really going to move. Especially annoying because now in the gunner sight, not so much for a BMP apparently, but if we go for a Bradley, how can I can't really do it for a Bradley. I mean a warrior in this.
Do you have to hit it from behind? I can't remember where you hit
If I do it
the
with a
warrior,
lap,
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, lap. He doesn't want to do more damage, he just wants to take out the engine.
turn around there, man.
I can't remember
Take
where
out the engine.
Is it in the front?
Yeah, it's at the front, so the front half.
There you go. So, for some vehicles, losing the engine is a lot more annoying because you get a lot of smoke. Apparently for the BMP it's not such a big deal. But say you're in a warrior and you get engined, now you're trying to look forward and you're like, oh, I can't see shit. So, taking out an engine on something like a warrior can actually be quite damaging. Well, it can really screw them over because they can't see you anymore. nor can they move. The third thing is, the final thing in that stat list is the tracks. If we take this here, and maybe not that one because it can't move, but say if I get in this and Denman gets a lap, I'll drive a bit, take a shot from the rocket. Hopefully Denman can hit us.
Rude. Yeah, get called out, man.
So we're driving along. Not care in the world. And we spin out because we lost the right track, or left track. As you can see now, we can't really do anything but spin on the spot. And as a driver, you need to be aware that if you've lost your left track, you're going to be leaning to the left. So not only is the spinning going to mess with your gunner, but you may end up in a situation where because you've turned one way, I won't have depression on him that way. Thankfully he's tracked both sides now, so I do have depression. But as the gunner and driver, if you're tracked, you need to communicate with each other to turn in a direction that the gunner can engage. Also, try and react quickly if you get tracked. Don't just sit there spinning on the spot, because that's going to make your gunner real useless. If you get tracked, stop as fast as you can, figure out where the enemy is, and then try and at least turn in that direction. Worst thing you can possibly do is turn it with the good track side pointing towards the enemy, because then odds are you're going to can't engage.
PTS?
Yep.
I was just going to say, if you've got a squad leader who's nearby who's actually paying attention and another vehicle calls out, I'm tracked, it's even sending 2 or 3 guys over to help you get it repaired can be really useful, so don't be afraid to ask for help if there's infantry nearby.
Yep, that is absolutely correct. One other fun thing is if we can get Denman to spawn in a couple of lodges. If you have a high power weapon, like a tank. Tank rounds will actually go through if you have AP rounds. Oh, line them up next to each other if you can.
Yes.
Kind of not too likely to come up, but sometimes it does. Oh, it didn't work. Damn, must have missed.
No, it's gonna blow.
Oh yeah, okay, so the other one is on fire. So you can shoot through stuff, or through vehicles with AP.
I didn't even know that.
That can be super satisfying when you get like a technical and a full logi in one shot.
Can that occur against a 30 mic? BMP?
30 mic, I haven't seen it come up. I mean, we can always test it. But
yeah, it would very rarely come up in combat, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
Does that work from destroyed vehicles too?
Destroyed vehicles? I don't think so. Like, probably because the wrecks are really glitchy at the moment, you can drive through them half the time. I don't know, Denman, can you look and see if it goes through? I mean, maybe hit that tank behind if we're lucky.
Sure, I'll look. Well, I went through, but there's a wreck over here as well. That it hit.
Well, I mean, from what I've seen, oh, that looks damaged, but that might just be because it's abandoned.
That one was still functioning.
That one was smoking when you told me to bounce the shell the first time, and then
oh right,
I did bounce it, and then it penetrated through that tank and hit the other tank.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So over penetration can be a bit glitchy, but might be something to consider. Don't line up because I've had it happen where we had a T-62 fighting something. I came up behind it in a spandrel to help it out, and the guy shot through the T-62 and killed me. So it's not guaranteed to happen, but sometimes your rounds will go through and do extra damage. Light vehicles, always going to happen. Very fun when it does. What else have we got? Alright, so now we're just going to go through a typical combat encounter. So what kind, well, basically the process that you want to do for calling out a target, how the gunner is going to react, what the driver's role is, and how you're supposed to do things. So if Denman and I hop into this vehicle, and Denman rolls us around a bit over to the south. So as the gunner, I'm going to be always scanning for targets, and as soon as I see something, say I see, or say Denman sees that.
We hit something?
Is there like an invisible wall for how far you can go?
Oh, maybe.
Shouldn't be.
Yeah, maybe on the gunnery range? I don't know.
No, it shouldn't be. It should be able to drive all the way out.
No, there's just some invisible object. Okay, that's interesting.
No. Whatever. So say we're scanning around and I see a target there. I'm going to say MTLB. I'm going to decide if we want to stop or not. Since we're moving on a pretty smooth surface and I'm going to have a good shot the whole time, I'm not going to say stop. I'm just going to go for it. And if it's down, don't need to worry about it too much, but say it's like an actual tank, and it's a big problem, I might say, oh, T72, like 192 degrees. So I'm going to identify what it is, and I'm going to say where it is. Might say distance or direction of travel. If I'm the gunner, it probably doesn't matter too much because I'm going to be aiming at it, but it's always good to communicate to your driver what's happening. So, say I see the T-72, I'm going to say T-72 north, stationary, engaging, and then I might say hold, or, I don't know, depending on how in sync you are with your driver, he might decide to hold if he knows it's a good time. But you're going to identify the target, you're going to either tell the driver to stop or not to stop. So it's the gunner that decides how you're going to be moving once the engagement starts, and if needed, the gunner's going to start telling the driver how to position because you start an engagement. The driver, if you stop, say you find a tank, say keep us rolling, Demo. If we are rolling, and I see this blodgy here, say it's a tank, I might say tank 12 degrees, hold. Then ideally the driver should not move, wait for me to fire, then orient armor to where it should be. If he doesn't know where it is, then he might ask again if he missed it. But you don't necessarily want to orient armor straight away because some vehicles don't have the greatest stabilization. And if he turns when I'm about to take a shot, then it might knock me off. So like now he's, or perhaps not so easy.
I'll do a handbrake turn to show how badly it messes it up.
Yeah, so it can totally mess with you like that. So ideally, if the gunner asks for a stop, try and stop in like a smooth way. Unless they sound very distressed or something. I don't know. But you want to try and keep it smooth. Let the driver take his shot. Once he's taken his shot, then you can do your hard maneuvering, and because they're going to be reloading the whole time anyway.
It really depends on what surface it's on. If you're on a road, yes, you can probably still orientate and turn when on a road because it doesn't bounce too much.
Yeah, perhaps this isn't the best place to demo it because it's so flat and it's going to be easy to aim anytime anyway. But if we were in, say, a T-62 that has awful weapon stabilization, if he turns at all, it's not really going to keep up with the stabilization. So it can be a good idea to just wait until they've taken their first shot, then orient, because they're going to be reloading. If it turns into... yep.
I I know in real life, tank tactics and maneuvers, gunner calls when they're about to fire with just firing or whatnot. Would it be something worth considering taking into squad tanks just for such a situation where the driver is orientating and the tank is lining up a shot?
I think I do is call out whether it's a hit or a miss on every fire, so that everyone in the crew at all times knows exactly what's happening. So if you miss, I can at least tell somebody about it so that you know that we're at a disadvantage and you're going to have to do something.
File low.
So throughout the entire encounter, if it is an extended encounter and say they're actually shooting back and it's not a Logi that dies in one shot, then the entire time the driver is going to be telling the rest of the crew what the status of the vehicle is. So they can see the health and the modules. They can tell you, oh, we're tracked. They can tell you, oh, we're at half hull health, or like half health. Or if turret's fucked, I mean, you're going to know as a gunner, but commander might want to know. Either way, they've got access to all the information about the status of the vehicle. They need to be communicating every shot. Was it a bounce? Did you take damage? What took damage? That kind of thing. That helps whoever's kind of in charge of the vehicle to know, oh, we're on 1/4 health. We might want to back off. We don't want to continue that engagement because we... Or, I've hit 3 good hits. I'm just about to shoot my last hit. I want to stay in the engagement, even though the next shot we might die. I know I'm going to get my shot off first. We're going to win. That information is important for both parties to know, or all 3 parties to know. The driver needs to know if you're getting a lot of hits, then they're probably in a good spot. They don't need to worry about moving. If you're getting a lot of misses, they're going to want to know, okay, we probably want to pull out straight away because we're not going to win. That kind of thing is really important for anyone in the vehicle to know. So, gunner is going to...
Driver's responsibility to call out the help, mostly.
Yeah, because they're the only one who can see it. So, gunner needs to be telling you, how's the engagement going? Are we winning or losing? Driver needs to tell the gunner how much health we have, because they don't necessarily know how much damage they've been taking. And then whoever is more in charge of the vehicle, depends what your dynamic is. Whoever's more in charge is going to decide if we continue the engagement or we don't, based on the information. If you finish the engagement and one of you is tracked, or you get to the point where you're on fire because you're about to blow up, as before, the driver's going to be the first one to jump out to try and repair. Because obviously the gunner, say you're on fire, they're almost dead. Gunner should be able to continue shooting as long as possible until they're dead. And then, depending on how the repair is going, then the driver might say, oh no, crap, you have to get out, you have to help me repair this. And then that's probably the only time where a gunner is going to hop out and start repairing.
PTS?
Yep.
I have a question. In terms of like practicality, where do you find that the most mistakes occur and the most friction occurs?
Probably the worst thing in a crew is not communicating with each other. Either if you're a driver and your gunner is sitting there dead silent during an entire engagement, you're just sitting there thinking, like, I have no idea how this is going. My gunner, can he even engage?
Can he see the target?
Yeah, you need that is the worst thing that can possibly happen. I think is if the gunner and driver aren't communicating what's happening.
I have a second question. Sorry. In terms of, I know sometimes when I'm in a vehicle, the driver, if I'm the gunner and there's no commander in the vehicle, if I'm the gunner, the driver will often need really specific navigational orders, like and my question is based around like how much initiative should the driver have in terms of movement? Say if the gunner doesn't have time to communicate something, or if there's a target, you don't want to have to be placing move markers every single time. Just like how much of a mind of their own should the drivers have?
It's going to be down to, I mean, like I would say, if you have a low skill crew, probably the most important person is the driver, because positioning is probably the hardest thing, or like the most important thing. But once you get past like a bad crew, I'd probably think the gunner should have the most authority on what happens.
Right. Okay.
Because they probably have the best idea of how well they can engage, and like they have a better view of the battlefield, so they know, they might see like a little gap or something you can drive through that the driver can't see because they only have the little window.
Right. Thank you.
If you get hit, should the commander stay in the tank, or should they be the look out and to keep an eye on, or should they be come out first with the driver to repair?
Depends on the situation.
Yeah.
If you're like really long distance engagement, the commander can jump out first. But if you're in close quarters with infantry around, should stay.
As harsh as it sounds, if there's a chance that you're going to be shot at, you should probably only have the driver hop out, because at least then only one's dead. Like
then the commander can switch to the driver and get the fuck out.
Say you get like mined in the middle of nowhere, and it's not an ambush.
You know
it's hard to
nobody's
tell.
around. You just come out of the main, for example.
If you know no one's around, or it's very unlikely that the people are going to get shot hopping out, it's probably fine to have the commander and the driver hop out. But if there is a chance that one of them's going to die, only have the driver dismount, and then at least you don't lose two people in one go. And then you can sit there, shoot whoever killed the driver when you hopped out, and then once you've reevaluated the situation, you have another chance. At least then the commander can hop out, and maybe they don't die that time. But yeah, it's a bit situational.
Don't jump out instantly. You get like tracked or injured out.
Yeah.
You have to assess the threat that came in the first place, neutralize it, then jump out.
Yeah, and probably give it a minute, just look around for a bit, because sometimes you do see them.
And if there's friendlies nearby, like a sapper or combat engineer, they can do that instead.
Alright, well, maybe go. Sidetracked a bit too much there. What's your point? Just
on some gun sites, is there special things to know?
Yeah, we've kind of covered that already.
Oh, sorry.
We've covered that, but this whole thing's been recorded, mate, so we'll come back to that. We'll post it so you can view it later.
Yep. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to cover was audio cues, and just go over what different vehicles sound like, because that's quite important to know. If there's a tank coming around the corner and you're a tank, that's not so bad, but if a tank is coming around the corner and you're a scout car, then you might want to get the hell out. Right, so it's important to know what vehicles sound like. Most tanks are going to be fairly obvious. I mean, they're going to be louder than most things. It's going to be a lot of track noise. And I mean, a T-62 is maybe one of the less recognizable sounds.
The quietest out of the water tanks.
But if we... Well, I think we have most of the vehicles spawned in. We'll just go have a look at all of them. Oops.
Here it is. When's the tank? Night.
Friday, I think. Is it? I don't know. The dates are posted in the Discord.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. Friday.
And zombies mods tomorrow night, eh?
Yeah.
There is a post that has all the days up already.
Alright, so maybe if we start with the tanks. Alright, so the Abrams has a very distinct sound. It's got a turbine engine. So it's got kind of a smooth whine to it. Worth trying to recognize that sound. And when it's idling, it's quite loud. Got that like same kind of turbine whine to it. Next one we might want to do is T72, which is basically the same as the T62, I think. Kind of got more of a diesel-y sound to it, I don't know.
Show me the way. Show me the way.
But it's pretty loud when it's on the move. Big engine. The more recognizable sounds that we might come across would be Strikers, BTRs, and BRDMs. So if we have a Striker around here. I'm not really a car guy, so I don't know how you describe that engine, but I guess it sounds a bit smoother and higher pitched to me than most other vehicles. If we do a BTR in comparison, got more of a normal engine sound to it, I guess. Bit of a growl to it, more than a whine. And then I guess the most recognizable one maybe is the BRDM, which at idle has quite a distinctive like rev up sound for some reason. So it's kind of like a BTR, but a bit different. Most important thing is when it's just idling, sitting there, sometimes it will do a... shouldn't do it.
You watch, it won't do it now you want it to.
Well, sometimes it'll just rev up.
There it
like
is.
Yeah, there it is.
In between gear changes, sometimes it can be, so just after stopping or starting, it'll just do a gear change rev.
But sometimes it'll just be sitting there and you'll hear, like this is the vehicle that you hear that does the little... Yeah, well maybe we'll just leave it idling and we'll see. Maybe that's a glitch.
Do it. Don't make us look like idiots.
We'll move on from there. Name wraps and stuff probably doesn't matter too much. The main thing is Strikers have kind of like a higher pitch, whiny noise. BTR.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Just does a
So you
rev.
heard the... Yep, it does a rev. Which, if you hear it, at least you know either there's a scout car with a fiddly little machine gun, or there's a big scary Vandal. But at least you know it's one of those two, not, you know, a tank.
This is
or
also
BTR,
the reason why if
whatever
you're
else.
trying to hide, always turn off your engine.
Yep. That was my next point in terms of sounds. I think the most important things is learn the BTR sound, learn the BRDM sound, and learn the Striker sound. Because those are the most important to know. Anything else, you'll probably know it's a tank by the tracky sounds.
Depends.
Otherwise, yeah.
P-72 and the BMP-2 sound very similar.
I should mention now that we've all taken your names, and so if this is Scout Car driving and you hear it and someone yells tank, we'll be less than pleased with you.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's not a tank. A tank is a bloody tank. That is an. That's a.
What do you mean? Everything's a tank.
That's a lab. That's a TAP B.
Fairly certain
That's a
everything.
BTR.
30 mil. 30 mil. You have to be specific.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So it's a 30 mil. Generally, it's a BTR 82A, but generally referred to as a 30 mil.
Gotcha.
Right?
Ooh.
Are we still calling shitboxes?
Often
Hang on,
enough,
what
but they
are
don't
you
really come
referring
up
to
in
as a
games
shitbox?
anymore.
I mean, BMP
Oh,
wants
this
to
is a year or so back now, but MTL, which you don't even see.
Oh
anymore.
no, that's a yeet mobile.
It's just not in the game anymore.
Yeah.
Get the
Bulldog,
Bulldog out, bro.
AA,
Bulldog out.
Bulldog AA and an MTLB are classified as yeet mobiles because that is all you do with the vehicle is you yeet it to a point.
Alright.
The Bulldogs are invincible. What are you on about?
Yeah.
Alright. So, assuming because you're at the armor training event, you probably know what the vehicles are, but try and be specific when you call out targets. The other thing with sound is when you stop, turn off your engine. There's no reason to have it running. It doesn't really take very long to turn on and off.
No fuel.
And if someone is looking around for your vehicle, it's going to be a shitload easier for them to find it if it's sitting there idling, right? Additionally, if you are sitting there idling, it's much harder to hear a different vehicle approaching you. So, as the driver, not moving, turn off the engine. No reason not to. Same goes for the gunner. The incessant whining of the bloody gun, when you have that constantly happening, this one isn't even so bad, but you know,
Tanks is where it's really bad.
it's horrible if you constantly hear this sound for no reason. If you're just traveling from, like, you know, here's your main, here's the battlefield, there's no reason to have your stabilization on all the way from there to there. Just turn on stabilization when you actually think you've got a problem. Personally, I find it quite fun that I like to sit there, and then when there is an enemy, I like to like activate and search for him.
Yeah.
You know,
I get what you mean too.
like I'm the Terminator.
Yeah.
And I like to think it's more scary for infantry like that. So
You just see the turret just turn and lock on.
same goes for if you are switching seats between tanks. Like if you're in the commander seat and you hop back into the driver's seat. Probably, if you can, make a habit of turning off stabilization and pointing the gun forward when you switch seats. Because sometimes in a fight, you might be sitting in your tank gun, be pointing over here, and need to switch to the commander seat, but for some reason the commander seat's pointing over here.
Press E and then
really
turn the
annoying.
stabilization off.
Yeah, so anytime you're going to hop out of the commander seat, if you're just two-manning it, point it towards the thing, hop back into the driver's seat with stabilization off. If you leave it on, it'll just stay pointing in the direction you pointed at when you switch seats. Also, if you do that, when the tank is driving around, even though the gunner turned off stabilization, you're still going to have commander seat stabilization noise. So you're always going to hear that, which, I don't know, maybe it's not such a big deal for others, but it annoys me.
What's the event?
The armor training that's happening right now? It's the armor training. Alright, so that's pretty much it for sound.
PTS.
Yep.
So for all MBTs, IFVs, and BTRs and Striker, the distance you can start hearing the vehicle from is 600 meters. If you hear any type of those vehicles, that means they're within 600 meters.
Alright, that's good information to know.
What happens if you have your effects turned up all the way though?
then you can hear it
You'll
better.
still hear it, but you can't hear it outside the 600 meter
Oh,
range.
okay.
So sound doesn't travel more than 601 meters, as it turns out.
I did not know
Okay,
that.
so for all MRAPs,
All sound or just
Scout
engine?
cars, and what's it, Peckies and Logis, you start hearing the vehicles at 300 meters. That's why the Scout car is very scary.
Is that why you can only hear tires on MRAPs? Like,
Yes,
at longer
300
distances?
meters. When you start hearing the MRAPs.
Alright, well, okay, so the next point is communication with your team and map awareness, right? So, personally, I have bound the command menu, that's normally on caps lock, to a mouse button, and the map, like the normal mini-map, to another mouse button. So, this map, and this map, I have both of those bound to the mouse, because when I'm playing this game, that is actually what it looks like. Like, I'm always looking at the map, right? And that goes for infantry or vehicles. The vehicles, especially if you're sitting in the gun and you're away from any combat and you're not scanning around and you've turned off your stabilization, you can be sitting there looking at the map, figuring out how you're going to approach whatever the thing is. In addition to that, you're also going to be aware of any map markers people put down. So, if someone marks a tank and it shows up there, you're going to know, okay, there's a tank around there, hopefully. And the team is good. And as soon as it pops up, you're going to know, because you're always looking at the map. In addition to that, anytime you see something, you better mark it. Or if you confirm that something is not there, delete the mark. It's so much nicer when you get a game where every marker is actually good, and there's a lot of them, right? So if you see if you glimpse a vehicle and don't manage to kill it, you might mark it, put the direction of travel, if you can, and then any other tank crew, like anyone else in the game, is going to appreciate that. Oh, there might be a striker over here, and it's going towards this objective. So there might be a striker showing up there eventually. Or I won't take my Logi through there, you know? It's really, really useful information. Another thing on the map is if you have, say, a 3-man crew, I would always assign the other crew members to fire teams, so that if they see something, they can say, oh, I saw a thing, they can mark it themselves. So, say, Denman has his fire team, he saw a tank over to, I don't know, the north. He can say, oh, I saw a tank. And then the driver or whoever can straight away see that. Hopefully see it. Not always obvious, but they'll be able to see it and react as fast as they can without, missing a bearing, or say you have another crew, a dismounted crewman in your squad, so you can't use a bearing or something. They can mark it with their fire team. They can put the attack mark on it, or whatever. If they're in the vehicle and they're in the gun, or I'm in the gun, if they've put their marker there, it shows up on my compass. So I can look to where it is, and even though the tank is rolling around all these hills and stuff, I still know that's the direction I'm supposed to be pointing. So if there is a tank mark like there, and I know it's accurate, I'm going to put my mark on there. That way, when we're going towards it, I can put my stabilization on, look in that direction, and then at least I'll be looking more or less in the right direction when we come up to it. So anytime you see a marker, you can put your mark on it, or you can tell your driver, go here, or you're discussing with your crew, should we approach it from this angle or, this angle? Each person could put down their marker, they can say where they want to go, what they want to do. This makes discussing things around the map a lot easier. The other thing with communication and map awareness is you want to be talking with other squad leaders. If you see a map marker there or something, and it's a bit old, you may want to ask the squad, like in command chat or something, is that vehicle still there? Say there's like, say squad 2 is hanging out right here, you might talk to squad 2, hey squad 2, there's a tank marked right next to you, is that actually there? Because if it's not there, you don't really want to worry about it, right? So, you always want to be able to communicate with the other squads, keep that map updated, watch what they're doing. When it comes to... I'll leave that later. The other thing is, if you have enabled those settings, as I said before, for the viewing of fob radii and fob supply points, means that you can always be aware of which fobs have supplies. You know, oh, that fob there has 800 supplies. That's enough for me to go drive my vehicle there and drop a repair station. Also, you can always be looking at the map. You see, oh, there's a nice fob there. We have a helicopter. I can talk to my helicopter, ask him, hey, can we get some supplies to that fob? I want to put a repair bay down. And then he might actually do it. Hopefully. So, pretty much, if you don't have a reason to be looking around, you should be looking at the map. And even when I'm looking at the, when I am scanning around, I'm still opening up my mini-map every now and then, just to have a look, see where my teammates are, any new markers come up, you know, that kind of thing. Right. So, when it comes to other ways to support your team, right, you've got two main things, is every vehicle carries ammunition, right? So this one apparently has very little left, but normally a BMP will carry 600 ammo, as will any other IFV, right? So you have that ammo. Either you can deliver it to infantry, say there is a squad that's been fighting on a point, I don't know, say there's a flag there, there's no fob anywhere near, you'll know they want ammo. If you show up, or you can show up, you can tell them, hey, anyone need a resupply? I've got ammo on my thing. And they can rearm off you, and they can keep that fight going for a lot longer. The other thing you can do with ammo is, if you are going to return to main, and you're going to pass through a fob, you might as well dump all of your ammo on that fob before you go all the way back to main. Because you're going to grab ammo anyway, you might as well leave some of it on the battlefield. The other main role you have as armor, especially in an IFV or an APC, is actually transporting troops, right? So, say you have a situation where this is our previous point, this is the point we're trying to attack, and you have like two squads running through 800 meters open field, trying to go from there to there, and they're constantly being cut down. You can tell other squads that are on this point, hey, would you like a ride from there to the point? And hopefully, if they're feeling like working as a team, they'll say, yeah. They'll organize their guys to hop in, like try and tell them to group up. We can roll in, pick up all the guys, take a path around, and then surprise attack from another position. Because it's a lot easier for a vehicle to roll in from like a flank than it is to run a bunch of guys all the way around, where like they might make it all the way there and then get discovered and then it fails, and then they've lost like 20 minutes. Versus if they hop in a vehicle, roll in, hopefully you find a safe place to drop them off, then they can do like a nice flank or something. All they need to do is get a rally up somewhere hidden, and they can come in from a different angle. In addition, they're also going to be able to rearm off you and get ready again as they ride. So you have a huge value to the team if you keep an eye on the map, watch for any big groups of people that are pretty far off a useful point, or you see them trying to push through an open field that's going to lose a lot of tickets. Say, hey, I can drop people in there. You're like a better version of a helicopter because you're not super obvious and you don't get shot down. So you can actually pick people up, drop them off. Really, really helpful. If we talk about moving on the battlefield, right? So there's general battle tactics. If you are driving an armored vehicle and you want to move from point A to B, in general, when you're driving, you probably want to try and keep in the low ground so that you're not as visible from a long distance. Say, I want to move along here. I'm kind of moving in the same direction. Oh, I mean in that direction. That moving along the low ground is going to be a lot more helpful for you to stay alive if you pick the low ground than if you're driving up on the high ground. Everyone can see you. You know, you kick up a fair bit of dust and you have a pretty significant outline if you're on the crest of every hill rather than behind it, right? So that's kind of what your driver should be doing when he's choosing a path from A to B. Well, when you come to a stop, right, you want to consider... no, sorry, that point has already been made. The other thing with moving through the map, not only do you want to try and stick to the low ground, you want to pick a path that isn't going to take you through a whole bunch of enemy infantry. Say we have a bunch of infantry here, pushing between these 2 points. Well, these are where your 2 points are, right? There's going to be a lot of infantry between those two. So if you want to get around in a flank, you don't want to drive through the center of those guys, nor do you want to drive through, well, anywhere where it's likely for a lot of infantry to be. So in general, you want to try and pick a path that's going to take you around the back roads if you're trying to avoid being seen. So if Dinman just drives along here, obviously he's there, you can't see him. If he was up on that ridge behind it, you can. Okay, so when you come to a stop, you want to always consider trying to get into a hull down position. So if I hover around here by Denman, you can see that from a certain angle, only his crows is showing, right? So that's a pretty good spot if he's trying to look at me here. Only the crows visible, can only do damage to the crows. Tanks, if only turrets showing, pretty easy. Well, hard to hit them. If he was instead sitting there, watching down on all of these guys here, right, he's going to be pretty obvious, pretty easy to hit by a lot. If he was just like a little bit further back and only the crows showing up, a lot harder to hit, a lot more effective. Yeah, alright. That goes for providing 5 support as well. So if you're trying to take on infantry, and the infantry is here, at this distance, like within 100 meters, it's going to be very easy for them to hit you. And maybe take out your engine, maybe do more than that. However, you've got a big gun, you've got big optics. If they're back here, it's going to be a lot harder for them to hit you. The max range of the hat is like 200 meters for the RPG versions, right? So if you're beyond 200 meters, you're probably safe from most of their scary AT. When you are trying to cover like a hab or something, you want to have the nicest sight lines you can, but consider that like the more you can see, the more they can see in most situations. So if you're crested up on top of a hill, and you can see 360 degrees and you don't know where the enemy is, say Denman comes right up onto this hill here, then anyone from this position, like he can look around, he can say, oh fantastic, I can see anywhere they approach from. But the trouble with that is if they approach from any direction, from anywhere, like they're going to be able to see him, but he might miss them because he's trying to cover 360 degrees, right? So you might want to consider limiting your field of view just so like to something you can actually watch, so you're not unnecessarily exposing yourself. So putting yourself into a position where you have a narrow field of view, but you can cover it is better than just finding the highest point you can and watching from there, because a corner or something's going to see you, you're going to die. Right, so more specific examples of when you're going to attack a hab or something. In general, you want to consider, like, is it a busy hab? Are there actually a lot of people there? Because if there are, probably don't want to go near it, especially if there are only, if you don't have any friendly infantry. So like, if you've already got friendlies on there and there's a proper firefight happening, if a AT tries to come out, he's probably going to get shot. You're probably okay to move in on it. But if they're basically just sitting there and you're the only target, you're going to die if you go near it. So try not to assault a hab by yourself, especially if it's, you know, in a good position where you can't just shoot into the hab easily. If it's behind some walls or something, you're not going to want to try and go into it. But say you do actually want to assault it, odds are the first thing you want to go for is the ammo crate, because that's what they're going to be using to get all of their rockets to shoot at you. An AT guy with a full ammo crate is like probably the worst thing to go up against as a vehicle, other than maybe like a tank if you're a APC. If they've got an ammo crate, they can just launch like 6 rockets at you in 10 seconds. You're going to die. And the first shot is probably going to take your engine out and then you're stuck. So the first thing you want to do is take out the ammo crate so they can't rearm. Then the next thing, if possible, is the radio. If they've left it exposed and you can take it out with like a striker or something, you might be able to take it down 1 level quite quickly. And if you do that, then they can't spawn anymore. It's a lot more manageable. So first to the radio, first the ammo crate, sorry, then the radio. And if you're a tank or something, you might do ammo crate and then the hab with heat. Because 4 heat rounds is going to take out the hab, then they can't spawn. So take away their ammo, then take away their ability to spawn. Next thing you might consider doing as a specific battle tactic, right, is if you have your demon backs up a bit. If you're still there.
I am, I'm just not letting me move.
Say he's sitting behind this ridge, right, and there might be enemies out in that direction, but it's completely unknown where.
No.
Nope. Okay. So instead of cresting the whole vehicle up to this hill to look around, which might be a bit awkward depending on the gun depression, you can simply drop one guy out, walk up to the top of the hill, and look with the person. It's a lot easier to maneuver one guy than it is to move an entire vehicle, right? They've got binoculars. They're not going to get spotted. They're going to have probably better view, because the binoculars are awesome. And it's faster, because you don't have to like drive up, try and find a spot where people can see, and whatever else. Yep. So it's a lot better, usually, to just send a crewman up. They can have a look, mark where it is with their fire team lead. Then when you know, then you can go up, right? Another thing is, say you know there is an enemy over a hill, say there's a tank right on this side of the hill, and your tank is on this side of the hill. You know they're there because you can hear the engine. You do not want to approach them over the hill, because if Denman slowly creeps up that hill, we'll see. First thing we can see, is their lower plate, and their turret won't be able to aim down at us. So until he gets all the way over that crest, you can't do anything as you're cresting, but the enemy can see you and shoot you. So you're just presenting them with a very easy target. Sometimes they'll miss and it's okay, but in general, if you know an enemy is over a hill, instead of going over the hill yourself, go around the hill, because then it's a lot easier to manage how much you're exposing yourself, and when you crest, you're not going to have to deal with massive elevation changes. The gun can be more stabilized. It's just a better way to approach it. So don't go over the hill, go around the hill, because it's just going to go smoother. I think the only other bit, or no, there's a couple new, is timing, right? If you have a look at your command map or in the spawn menu, you look up in this section. I guess it doesn't show it for this, but
Allied vehicles.
Normally in allied vehicles, it will list what vehicle you have and then the spawn time. Oh. Yeah, okay, it'll list the delay, if there is a delay. Say there's a map that has delayed spawns on tanks. It'll be like 20 minutes. So you know when it's 20 minutes in and you're rolling around your BMP-1, now there's a tank on the field, you have to be a lot more scared, right? The other thing is there's the ticket values, but probably the most useful thing overall is you look at that list, you look at what the enemy has. If they've got 3 BTRs and a Spandrel, and you've got like 1 Bradley, then you'll probably want to approach that a lot more cautiously or something, Or they have 3 30mm and you've got 3 strikers. You're going to want to run your strikers around together because they're going to be more effective. So always consider what vehicles you have and what vehicles the enemy has, and when they spawn. The other thing with timing is driving fast at the start of a game can be a really big deal, because if you spawn in your main and there's a choke point, I guess hard to say on this map, but say you're playing...
There's a valley.
Well, so say you're on Talil outskirts, right? And
Little Rush gas station.
That's the runway, or I don't know. I don't think of an example right now. Talil outskirts, abandoned Soviet hangars, right? That point on some layers is almost always going to be a point, right? So if you can get there really, really fast in your 30mm, then you can wipe an entire lodgy or something, right? Especially if you get there before they finish building their hab, or as they're actually building it, then you can wipe the whole team, or like wipe a quarter of their team, and they'll never get that point because you came in, wiped them out straight away. So if you have like a slow rollout, you might want to consider not running into a hotspot like that, because they'll already be set up. But if you have a really good exit time, you might want to just rush in there and try and catch them with their pants down. Or if you're a tank and it's a delayed spawn, your team hasn't brought out your tank for like 5 or 10 minutes after they've already spawned, and you need to know their tank could have been rolling around for 10 minutes, and it could be anywhere, right? But if you get your tank straight away, you roll out, like how far they could have gone based on how far you could go. You know, and you'll kind of have an idea of how far into the map they might be. Nava had a real so you know, in Nava there's the US spawn like up here, and then the Russian spawn down here. Nope, apparently that doesn't show up. Russian spawn down here, and there's that road that goes all the way up and around. Often enough we've been able to get the Russian tank, drive up and around to where the road exits the US spawn, and catch their tank as it actually came out of their spawn, because we knew when our tank spawns and we could drive there fast. So always consider the timers. The other thing is, if you kill a tank, try and make a note of when you killed it, because then you'll know when it respawns and when you have to start worrying about tanks again.
That's basically all vehicles.
And yeah, basically for all vehicles.
Gractus?
Yep.
I think, was there anything else we wanted to cover? Otherwise we might start wrapping this up.
I think that's the end of the list, so...
Was there any final questions you guys would like to ask before we wrap this all up?
Yeah, Dan has a question. It's about tank maneuver. During game, sometimes we're being called out, gunners call out driver to reverse while they're reloading. Is that a must-do thing, or is based on the team?
I would say that the driver should, if some.
Gunner says reverse.
Essentially, Dan said it's if the gunner tells the driver what to do, the driver has to do it unless there's a particular
No. I mean, while the gunner has fired the first shot, they say the driver need to reverse the tank so that enemy won't get a hit.
It would just depend. It depends. It's not black and white, I don't think, for that question.
To give you a quick answer to that, it depends on what your driver and gunner combo have decided to do. There is no rule set of how to do engagements. If your gunner would like you to forward it back, then do so. But it's not as soon as you shoot, drive back.
And also, like, if you're already in cover, or you're peeking out from behind cover, yeah, like what everyone else said, it's really depending on what you're doing.
Were there any final questions we might have, guys? Otherwise, we might wrap this up.
One tip about driving uphill: stay in first gear, get hold shift, and they'll stick the gear to the number.
Doesn't matter too much anymore, but
yeah. Cool. In that case, then we might wrap this up, guys. Or Helix, do you have something?
Is there a type of vehicle weapon that's just no point of trying to use it on a radio or a hab? Is like, if you could roll up on a hab with a striker, is there any point to trying to take it down with that with your gun?
With a striker, so taking out a hab.
What's the of the different types of weapons?
Yeah, with taking out a hab itself, the only vehicle weapon you really should use is a heat round from a tank, or the Hesh from the Britain. All weapons can be used against the radio. I should mention though, when it comes to radios themselves, you can use a lot of HE rounds to take down the radio, but to finish it off, if you're in a tank, it helps us pepper it with a bit of 50 cal, because that just seems to do the final bit of damage to it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Alrighty then, thank you very much, Gractus, for the lesson in armor training. Remember, these are just guidelines from our experience of many hours of being in the tanks. Of course, it can change depending on the situation and as you develop it over time, but that's what we hope to see. We hope to see a lot of people developing their own unique styles to make the match more interesting. Thank you, Gractus. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and I believe that's all.